Hi everyone. Just wanted to introduce myself for those who are first time here, and for those who will be watching this on YouTube. My name is Yeva, and I am an ESL teacher, blogger, ebook author, and instructional coach. And I love sharing my knowledge with you people. And today I decided to do a short session about teaching multi-level English learners. I get a lot of questions about how to teach multi-level classrooms, because a lot of us have students from beginner to intermediate to even advanced in the same classroom. So I have jotted down some notes for you, and see, I have a whole thing of notes, and I will be looking down at them so I don't forget what I meant to say. So without further ado, teaching a multi-level classroom is not an easy feat, okay? And we all know it, and we all have to juggle it, and there's no one size fits all solution, and what fits one person doesn't fit another person. And I looked online for some resources, and those resources are few and far between, because some of them require require a lot of teacher work, a lot of teacher preparation. Not everybody has the time, and unfortunately, even if we wanted to, like energetically, it's not possible. So there are a few things that you can do to help both you and your students. So number one is grouping. Good old grouping really helps when you are teaching multi-level classroom, okay? So pair work, when two students work together, group work when there's 3 to 10 students. And I don't know what your teaching situation is, but I know for me, I have 6 to 8 students at the high school, and then I have fewer that I work with at lower levels, 3 to 5. So again, it's up to you to decide what the grouping is. But if you have a large class, grouping. Also, teamwork works very well when teams are in competition with each other. And finally, whole class work, and this is by far the most difficult to juggle. So you can group your students by ability, by similar ability, which like ability, so to speak. That means that the students are of the same level, and they help each other. And this is good because they work on the same thing, and they also can negotiate the meaning, okay? So if one doesn't know something, the other one might know, and so on and so forth. Now, you can also group students by cross ability. So that means that a higher level student is working with a lower level student. Again, you have to think about what the task is, and if you're doing the same thing, if the entire class is doing the same thing, and how this works. But these may work depending on your particular situation. And another advice is you can try to teach to the middle and then adapt to different levels. A lot of times I feel like I'm teaching, and then I see that, you can read the room, and you can see somebody needs more clarification, and somebody needs to move faster. So it's a lot of juggling, but that's basically what we do when we have a multi-level classroom. So when you have a lesson, I usually start with whole group instruction, and my go-to, so when I teach at the high school, it is a support class. So my students learn English through content. So they're mainstreamed and it's full immersion. They go to classes, and they have to finish their homework, when they come to me, and I help them out with that. But I realized that I also have to teach them English because they do not get the grammar instruction in regular classes. They do not go over the vocabulary that they need in regular classes. So my whole class instruction is vocabulary list, and I make with content area words. I just basically sometimes I get those words from the text that they're reading. I base them on the questions that they're asking, also the conversations that we have. And then I pick out the 10 vocab words, and we work on that, the entire week. So like Monday I introduce, Tuesday we do some sentences, Wednesday some games, Thursday some review, different activities on a different day. I actually, and that serves as the whole group instruction. And then I can tailor the activities to the level of each student. So if I want them to use the vocabulary words in a story, for example, beginners would, I would ask them to write sentences, and the ones that are higher level, I would ask them to write a paragraph or something like that. I actually uploaded the vocabulary list, one of the vocabulary lists with the sample activities that I use for the entire week into the resource library. So when you go into the resource library, it will be under the all levels ESL tab. Another way to differentiate, to work with multi-level classroom is, for example, if you are working on the same thing, let's say you are doing a grammar lesson, right? Or you're doing some sort of reading, and if you have a teacher's instruction manual, that usually gives you a lot of extension activities which you can easily adapt to different levels of language proficiency. And then finally, you also end as a whole class, okay? So begin as a class, middle is differentiated, tailored to each proficiency level, and then you end as a whole class. And the end doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be any complicated, but for example, a final reflection, okay? So, what did you learn today? So a beginner could probably say, one word or draw a picture, and then an intermediate student or higher level students, could write a couple of sentences. They can all fill out an exit ticket, with a question. Again, same way, one word, a bullet point, or a full-blown sentence. You can end as a class with a certain chant, or even better, ask them to repeat what's for homework, not necessarily for your class, but if they have homework in other classes, they, should know what they should be doing. So this is how you can start the lesson. Now, moving on to reading. How do you differentiate reading? And this is one of the hardest things, because ideally, you would take grade level text and you would, read it, and then you would adapt it to each student's level, and you would teach it, almost like individually. And quite honestly, this is a lot of work, and it's just, given the situation's not possible. So what I've used, I used newzella.com, which already has levels of text built in, so the students can choose their own, or I can assign a particular level of reading to them, and we can go over again vocabulary. And what I do by vocabulary, I instruct them to highlight the words that they don't understand, and then you can group them with other students, especially if it's a higher level and lower level grouping, that they can help each other. That would be one way. Once that part is done, then you can move on to the comprehension questions, and they can demonstrate the comprehension by either writing on whiteboards and responding like that, or by answering yes or no questions, or matching pictures, and so on and so forth, again depending on the level. So this is my solution for reading the same text as a class. Again, it depends on what you have. You may need to just get the gist of the story for your beginners, so that you can, while the higher level students are reading the story, so that then you can all discuss it. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. I'm going to move into writing. How do you differentiate writing? And again, very similarly, the writing can be matched to the level. Okay, so if you have, let's say, a paragraph, and I struggled with a paragraph today with my high schoolers, because at the high school that where I teach, it is already presumed that you understand the basics. And they immediately jump to the question why, to the higher order thinking. And obviously ESL students, a lot of times they need to understand the what before they can delve into the how and the why. Ideally, writing can be done for beginners with single words matched to pictures, or given a word bank for them to choose from to write simple phrases, and then they can tell, you can conference. It's going to be like writing and speaking. The higher levels can write separate sentences about each, item that you need them to write about. Let's say, what is your or separate bullet points, like what is your ideal vacation, and they can write bullet points, draw something, also pick from a word bank. And obviously the higher the levels, the longer, the more complex sentences become, and the higher the requirements become. But again, if you have one let's say topic for paragraph writing, you can differentiate it in, very simple for beginner levels, and then, make it more progressively more complex for higher levels. I do have to say that I have been using, my ebook, 25 Authentic Speaking Activities that I published a while ago in the summertime. It has the pictures, and it has the discussion questions, the word banks, and the students really like it because they can do the writing activity, the extension writing activity, at their own pace and at their own level. So for example, for beginners, I have a task that you can say, write 5 sentences about the picture using the verb to be, or or write 5 questions using the verb can, when the higher level students can be given a different prompt based on the picture that we're working on. So I highly recommend you check out this ebook, 25 Authentic Speaking Activities, which I'm talking about writing, but writing and speaking are both productive, and I use them interchangeably. One more tip for teaching multi-level classroom is dictation, and it is kind of counterintuitive. Like, how can you dictate to people who are at different levels? But there is a simple way. So let's go back to the vocabulary that I mentioned at the very beginning. You can check for vocabulary comprehension and knowledge and hearing by just simple dictation. Okay, so let's say some people do it at the beginning of a class, some people do it at the end of a class. I like to do it at the beginning of my class as a review because as I mentioned earlier, my students are immersed in the English speaking environment, and they want my support for their regular content area classes. So if I don't get to it at the very beginning, it is difficult to rein them back in towards the end of a class. So you can dictate a sentence, and for beginners, you can ask them to write just one word, the vocabulary word. And for higher level students, they have to write the entire sentence and then underline the vocabulary word. That would be one way that you can use dictation. You can also use dictation with targeted words and structures. Again, asking less of the beginner students and more of those who are at higher levels with almost any text, whether it's a short descriptive text that you practiced before, or it's let's say a dialogue or something like that. So dictation is really, really good for all levels because we never really know what they hear until we see what they hear. That would be the dictation. I just looked at my notes and I realized that I wrote an example. One of the vocab words that I had this week was calm and gather. So if you say, the weather is calm outside, the beginner would write calm, and then a higher level student would write the entire sentence, the weather is calm outside, and underline the word calm. Now, listening for different levels, again, depends on what you do, but I have noticed that when you engage the students in something that they like, so songs are really good. You do have to do a little bit of prep in trying to find songs that would be suitable, not too fast, fairly simple vocabulary, and lots and lots of repetition, and songs are good because songs lend themselves to repetition anyway, but also you have to teach the students that if they follow a certain process of how you're gonna administer, so to speak, this listening exercise, then it will be adapted to different levels. So it is a whole group work. But at the same time, student works individually and then they work in pairs. Okay, so there's a 7-step process. So if you have ever done listening exercises or if you have done any listening exercises before, especially with songs, so you have to know that the most important thing is to review the task beforehand. Okay, so let's say you have a handout with the song lyrics. So you listen to the song, you go over any vocabulary, you tell the students, what your target is going to be. Let's say you were learning about the present simple tense, so you're going to, look for present simple tense words or expressions and so on and so on. So then the next step number 2, is to have the students listen with their eyes closed so that they don't look at the worksheets, or collect the worksheets if they don't want to close their eyes so that they don't look at it. The whole point is to just listen without looking. Then they can listen again. The third step is listen again, looking at the worksheet. Only on the 4th time listening do you want them to start filling in the missing either vocab or grammatical structure, because by then they will already have grasped enough of the content to be able to produce something. Listen and review as a group, in groups. Also compare answers, and then listen and review as a whole class. and stop at every single answer. So, I mean, these are 7 steps, and it seems like complicated, but listening, if you tell the students, again, the most important thing for all levels, multi-level or, you know, like low beginners, high beginners, intermediates, and advanced, is to know the steps and to be able to fill them in, so that, you know, so that they know what they're doing. So my 10 minutes has turned into 20 minutes, but I knew this was going to be a little longer because it is just so much to cover. I really hope that I was able to help you out with my tips. I know it's not an easy task to teach the multi-level classrooms, but again, if you can teach to the whole class for a little bit, differentiate the activities, ask the chunk it for lower level students and ask them to write words instead of sentences when writing, or speak words and phrases instead of full. Somebody just commented and I got totally distracted, but anyway, just adapting to each level, you know, when you're doing activities, then it should be okay. For multi-level, there's also, I think I could probably do a different training on how to collaborate with mainstream teachers, as in order to make the content accessible. So it will take a lot longer. So if you are interested in something like this, I can do, you know, that would be one of my other live video topics. So I mentioned the vocabulary list that I made. It's one of the vocabulary lists that I use, and I used this year. I uploaded it into the free resource library, and you can find it under the tab All Levels of ESL. So it is fresh there. I have sample activities that I do from Monday through Friday. Friday is a quiz. I didn't include the quiz because just, you know, for different reasons. If you want, I can probably include it later too. Just let me know. And also, I mentioned the 25 authentic speaking activities, which I use very, very successfully in group when I have to work with multi-level students. So for example, I have a group of 5, right now it's for 6th graders, because one of them is receiving intensive reading support, so I'm left with 4 only. But they are all very high need. From one is very low level, the other one has other issues, one just arrived, the other one's, it's just crazy. So when I have to work, you know, it's also divide and conquer, you know, it will happen. So I take note of what everybody has to do. So let's say, you know, one student has math, another student has a language arts project, and 2 have nothing to work on. So I would give the activities, you know, we would choose an activity from the 25 authentic speaking activities for the classroom, and I have students work in pairs. The activities include the word banks and the discussion questions. They also include the starter questions for the lower level students, and a writing extension which can be turned into speaking, and the topics can be adapted to whichever way you want. So again, for lower level student, it will be very simple. Write 5 sentences using the verb to be, when the higher level student, you know, could write a paragraph about the picture or something like that. So this is another resource that you can use, and you can also find it in my Simply Yeva School of ESL Teaching. When you click in the link in the description of the group, I can also put both links here in the comments so you don't have to search for anything. So that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching, for tuning in, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching later. Drop me a comment, give me a like. Share with your friends if you find this useful and if you know somebody who will benefit from this. Again, thank you very, very much, and I will see you next week. Bye.